Good morning. Today I want to talk to you about sprouting. We talked about this a little bit in another video about soaking the grains and how important that is. And that's what I've been doing for the past couple weeks. I've been soaking wheat and oats and rice and beans. And so I want to explain that to you and explain to you how important it is. You know, well, we talked about seeds and nuts, and we talked about how a grain is a seed. You know, whether it's corn or oats or the wheat kernel or beans, rice, all these things are seeds. And when you think about a seed or a nut, just say like a sunflower seed or a pecan or an almond, you know it has that outer shell on it. And in order to get to the good stuff on the inside, you have to break open that outer shell. Well, basically, that's what you're doing with a grain. It is a seed. And even though you can't really see the outer shell, it has this packaging that God put it in. It is its protective covering, its packaging just like the shell of a seed, and it protects it until it is time for it to be eaten or the time for germination to take place. It keeps all those nutrients inside, keeps it protected. It's like its outer packaging until the conditions are right for germination to take place. So if you eat grains like, say, wheat or oats or corn or rice or beans or anything else, if you eat them without first soaking them, because soaking them gets rid of the phytic acid on the outside. If you eat them before getting rid of that phytic acid is an anti-nutrient, it's an enzyme inhibitor, and so it is basically the outer shell or the packaging, so to speak, that holds the nutrients inside, and it is not allowing you, it's not digestible, it's not allowing you to digest it. And so that would be equivalent to if you say took a nut or a seed, say a sunflower seed or a pecan or an almond, and you just ate it without taking the shell off. It would be very indigestible. And you don't want to eat it like that. You want to open it, you want to crack it open, you want to get the good stuff inside, the nutrients. And it would also be the same thing as if, say, you go to the store and you buy a package of something and you just ate the package and everything together. And what you want to do is you want to open the package and you want to eat the good stuff inside, right? You don't want to eat the packaging. Packaging is no good, it's indigestible, it doesn't even have a great taste. And so that's what you want to do with your grains, with your nuts and seeds and your corn and your rice and your beans. You want to soak them in water overnight so that you are in essence allowing that phytic acid to, most of it, not 100% of it, but most of it to come off of it so that the nutrients are created. Whenever that phytic acid comes off, you have the nutrients, that it basically unlocks the nutrients and makes all those enzyme inhibitors go away so that now you can digest it and now you can get to the nutrients. Otherwise, when you eat it, you're just eating it in a packaged form and you're not really getting in the nutrients. And not only are you not getting the nutrients, but that phytic acid's job is to hold on to nutrients, so when you put that in your body, it is going to take in other nutrients from other foods that you've eaten too, because that's its job, is to hold on to nutrients, and they're not going to get digested and they're not going to get circulated throughout the bloodstream like they should and absorbed from the small intestine into the other systems and into the bloodstream as they should. They're just going to really create a wreck and havoc on your system. And so this is really the answer to the bread problem. This is really the answer to all the grain problems. Even if you're not gluten intolerant, if you ever notice that when you eat bread, that it just slows everything down. I mean, you just really feel like you have no energy whenever you're finished eating it. You feel like you just want to take a nap. And if you think, especially if you're trying to diet and lose weight, you're like, I cannot eat bread. I mean, that just is, I can't lose weight eating bread. And it seems to just slow your metabolism down. This is the way around that. This is the way grains were meant to be eaten, is to allow them to sprout, which means that you soak them overnight to get rid of the phytic acid, which is an anti-nutrient and an enzyme inhibitor. It is the packaging that does not allow the nutrients to be absorbed until the time is right, until it's time to germinate and the conditions are right. And so once you soak them, you create those conditions for the germination to take place. You create that moisture for it to say, okay, it's time for me to sprout and come alive. So to me, when you're eating sprouted grains, you're actually eating live food. It is coming alive, just like when you would eat raw fruits and vegetables. You're eating a grain in its live state where all the nutrients are there, even if you cook it, which you do want to cook your grains really well after you've sprouted them. That makes all the nutrients there. When you soak wheat overnight, in that process of soaking, when it begins to sprout and it gets that little white head on it where this little plant is starting to come out, it's actually, it's a seed. It's going to grow into a grass. So it gets that little sprout on it. Even oats are seeds that turn into oat grass. So when you sprout things, they are starting to grow into a plant. And all of that nutrition that needs to make it into a plant is there. All the power and for growth and nutrition is in that, that's going to make that seed go into a plant, is there when it first sprouts, when it first opens up. So everything that boosts it and makes it to grow, when you soak it, vitamin C is created. When you soak wheat, vitamin C is created when you soak it. Vitamin B, all the vitamin Bs are created when it is soaked. Vitamin B is what gives you energy. It's good for the nervous system. And when you eat bread that's not sprouted or not soaked, you feel the opposite of that. You're sluggish. Your whole system feels sluggish. You don't feel like you have any energy. But yet when you soak it, the vitamins are created. They are released. They are unlocked. And so now you're able to take in those B vitamins and get energy, instead of when you don't soak it, you don't sprout it. It's the opposite effect, because it is holding in, it's locked in, those nutrients are locked in, and you're not getting, and it's taking in all the other nutrients in your body that otherwise you would have given you energy. So when the raw foodists, and I believe the paleo diet, when they talk about grains being really bad for you and not meant for us to eat, they are right in saying that this phytic, it's because of the phytic acid, the anti-nutrients, is inhibiting everything. They are right in saying that that is not good for you. Yes, the phytic acid is not good. It's not good that we're eating something that is indigestible. And it would seem that, okay, grains are not something for us to eat because it's indigestible. But here's the key, and here's the answer to that. You soak it overnight. You allow it to be in a medium where it can sprout and come alive and unlock all those nutrients and take them out of their packaging and out of their shell. It becomes a totally different food now. You have chemically changed it in a good way, because now, instead of being this hard kernel, it's been soaked, it's opened up, it started to sprout into a plant. It now is no longer a grain, really. Now, when it's been sprouted and soaked, your body will process it like a vegetable instead of like a grain. Isn't that awesome and amazing? Your body will process it like a vegetable instead of a grain. So now, instead of bread, it's actually made into a vegetable. It is alive, it's full of nutrients, it's highly digestible, which is what you want. It's very important that we eat foods that are highly digestible. We talked a lot about that in the bowel management video. You want to eat foods that are very digestible. And just like with the fruit that's really ripe, it's like pre-digested. And grains that have been sprouted are pre-digested. They're already so digestible now that they're not going to give you that sluggish feeling. They're going to actually give you energy. And so this is the key. The key is unlocking the nutrients. The key is soaking them overnight. So I have been soaking rice and beans and oats and my wheat before I mill it into flour. I've been doing that for the past 2 weeks, and I can tell you from experience of eating this bread, it does not slow me down. It does not make me feel sluggish, like I want to take a nap. It actually just feels like I ate a vegetable. I mean, I don't feel weighed down. And you know, if you do have if you really have severe gluten intolerance, you really have you've been diagnosed, you probably don't want to eat grains at all for a period of time, maybe 6 months or so. You probably want to just completely not eat any grains. And then, as you start to reintroduce them to your body, do it slowly with sprouted grains and see how you do. You should find that you won't have a problem with it. And so that's very exciting news. And so if you think about it as, just think about, because I want to share with you about how the way that flour for like bread used to be, the way the wheat used to be processed, okay? A long time ago, if you think about it as, because sometimes we don't really think about wheat kernels, all we really see is the flour that we get at the store on the shelf, and we make that into bread or whatever, use it for pancakes and biscuits and stuff, but we don't really see it from the very initial stage is when it's just a kernel, and it's a hard kernel. So I want you to think in terms of beans, because I know that you've seen like dry beans. Okay, well, if you've ever been on a farm or a garden, my grandfather used to have a garden, and he had lots and rows of beans and peas, and we would sit there and shell those peas, like crowder peas or black-eyed peas. You sit there and shell them while you're watching TV or something, and they're when you first bring them in, they're not hard like they are like dry beans on the shelf at the grocery store. When you first bring those peas in, they're still soft because they were still growing, and they're in that stage where they're still soft. But if you let them sit out long enough, eventually they begin to harden and they turn into a dry bean. That's what you see on the shelf when you buy it at the store. And that is, it is growing that protective covering of phytic acid on it so that it can be protected until it is time for it to be eaten or to germinate or grow another plant. And so if you think about soaking the bean overnight, and you know on your dry beans the package says to soak them overnight, well, you're trying to, you know, get that back into a state that is edible so that you can cook it. And we don't really see that with our bread because we don't take our bread from the whole kernel and use it that way, which you can. You can take the whole kernel, you can soak it overnight, and you can cook it the next day just like a porridge, just like you would oatmeal, like that. But the way we usually use bread is it's already milled into a flour and we just start using it. But it wasn't ever soaked like that. It wasn't ever broken down to where it could be used by the body. When you soak it, that gluten is broken down, the starches are broken down, and so everything's done for the body already, and it's not having a problem. It's not having to take all this tons of energy from the body's resources, and it's not creating a toll on the other things in your body that is already in your body that you've eaten before, or, you know, I can definitely see how grains would be totally off limits and not good for us without the soaking process. And, you know, so I want to take you back to show you how they used to do it. So they used to, when things were slower and not as fast as they are today, when they would take the wheat in from the fields, it would still be in that state where it was still soft, like when I would go to my grandfather's garden and get the peas and we would shell them, they're still soft, they aren't dried out. So when they used to bring the wheat in, it would still be in that soft state. It was not hard, it wasn't dried, it didn't have the phytic acid on it where it was closed up and protected. That's its way of storing itself. Just like when you zip something up in a bag, a Ziploc bag, you're putting it away to store it. Well, eventually it dries out and it creates that protective covering, and it's its way of storing itself until the time is right. And so, which is very genius. God knew what he was doing. And so, so if you think about, like, back then, they were bringing all this wheat in and it wasn't hardened and dried. It was still in that state. And they would go ahead and they'd mill it into a flour and it was fine. But then as time went on, it got to the point where they were doing it so fast. They had this big industrial equipment and processes where they just bring it in really, really fast, and it wasn't staying in that state. You got so much so quickly, and it would sit there and have to wait to be milled, so it would dry out. And so then when it would dry out, it was no longer really ready to eat. It wasn't edible. It needed to be in that state where it would be soaked first, but doing this so fast, they're not going to wait to soak something overnight. They got to get that product out and make profit. They're not going to wait overnight to soak something. They didn't even realize it at the time anyway. What they did find out was that after when people would now use the flour to make bread, that was very, very thick and very dense, and they wanted it light and fluffy. So what they did is they started to remove all the nutrients out of it. They would remove the bran and remove the germ, where you just had this white refined product, which was basically gluten, the endosperm, the starch part that turns immediately into sugar without any other nutrients in it. And so that solved the problem. Now it's light and fluffy, but now you don't have the nutrients anymore either. And so, see, the bran is the part that makes it a little bit denser and a little heavier. And but when you sprout it and you add that water to it and you soak it, that's what makes it light and fluffy. So you can basically, have your cake and eat it too, because it might not be as light because it has so much nutrients in it. So it's a little bit denser and a little bit heavier and thicker, but when you add the water to it, it is light and fluffy. And so I actually added too much water one time, and it was so light and fluffy, it was like cake. My bread was like cake. It was just really fluffy and light. And so you can get it that way. And when you soak your flour overnight, and we'll talk more about this in the kitchen, but getting that flour to water ratio is the part that's a little bit tricky with your recipes. But adding a little bit more water to it and letting it soak, that creates all those nutrients, makes it pre-digested, totally digestible, not going to interfere with any of the other processes in your body or slow it down. And so that's what they did. So they started making white flour because of that. But before, the way they were doing it, when they would bring it in from the fields, it was already ready to go. They just didn't have so much mass production and so fast that, it was just, they were able to get it milled before it dried out, or before it went to that process where it had that protective covering over it. When they started doing it quicker, they got that protective covering over it, and it didn't get milled. It got milled and didn't ever, they're not going to go back and soak it because that takes too much time. And we didn't understand, we don't understand now, but our ancestors understood this. They prepared all their grains. Our ancestors way, way back, this is the way grains were done. They were prepared properly. They were soaked overnight. All your rice, your beans, your corn, your oats, wheat was all soaked overnight before they used it, before they ate it. That was just what they did. They knew how to prepare them. They had been taught that this is how you have to prepare it. But the big mass production, the commercial companies, they didn't do that. They weren't going to take the time to let any of that soak overnight for your sake of nutrition, or maybe they didn't even know. But people that did know, and people in other countries, they soak all their grains before they eat them. Corn, for instance, has to soak for like 2 weeks before it is eaten, because it has a lot of phytic acid, and oats have a lot of phytic acid. And some people say that you need an acid medium instead of just putting it in water. You need like some lemon juice or something in there. But I also did hear one actual doctor that was into nutrition say that you can just do it in water. And I've had no problem just doing it in water. I don't see, maybe if you put lemon juice in it, it might make more of the phytic acid go away. But as far as my digestion, I mean, I don't have any problem with digesting it. I can tell the difference just by soaking it in pure water alone by itself. And I'm not gluten intolerant, but I am sensitive, trying to be sensitive to my body, and I'm paying more attention to it and what it does. And I can totally tell. I've always known that when I eat something heavy like that, I just want to go to sleep and I just don't have any energy. I mean, that's what we all want to do after we eat a big meal, is go lay on the couch and take a nap. This doesn't do that to you. And even soaking my oats and my granola, when I make granola, I can tell a totally different, big difference. And it just doesn't give you that sluggish feeling. You literally feel like you ate a vegetable. So I'm very, very excited about this. And when we get to the kitchen, I'm going to show you more about soaking flour and everything. I've been soaking my rice overnight. I've been of course soaking the beans, and canned beans, they haven't done that, so they're going to cause you to have gas and things like that. When you eat dry beans and you soak them first, you're supposed to not have that problem. I don't know yet, but we'll see. I don't know if you've ever noticed that when you've tried dry beans, if you have less of a problem with that or not, but everything's supposed to be more digestible. You soak your nuts and your seeds overnight to do the same thing. And if you want, once you soak like almonds overnight, they're so full of water, they kind of taste like a carrot, or like they're the texture of a carrot because they're full of water, and they're really good. I like the texture and the taste of them. But if you do want a crunchier nut, you can always put it back in the oven and or in the dehydrator and get it crispy again. You're not going to reverse the sprouting process. That's pretty neat. Once you've actually sprouted it and opened it up, by putting it back in the oven and drying it back out, it's already been sprouted. All the nutrition is there. If you wanted a little crunchier texture, you're not going to reverse the process by drying it out. That's actually how you do the flour. When you sprout the kernels, the seeds, you sprout them. And then, so what I mean by that is you soak them overnight, and then you can go a couple of days of letting them dry out to let them grow a little bit if you want to. And then you put them in the oven or the dehydrator and you dry them back out so they're hard enough to go into the meal, because you can't put soft kernels in the meal. You'll mess your meal up. You'll damage it. So you want to put them dry in there, and so you close them and close it back up. I mean, you've already released the nutrition, not really closing it back up, but you're getting it hard again, even though it's sprouted, and you put it through your meal, and then it turns into flour. Or you can just take the flour that's already milled and soak the flour. And that's where you have a little bit of it gets tricky with learning your water to flour ratio for your recipe. But I found that adding that little extra water is just, it's really nice. It makes the dough very easy to work with, and I've been doing all my bread that way for the past couple of weeks, and I really like what I'm getting. I did a pizza dough, and it was absolutely wonderful. I added some oats to it actually and let them soak in there with the wheat, and that pizza was like the best pizza crust I've ever had. And actually put a picture on Facebook of it when I did it, and it was wonderful, wonderful, and no sluggish feeling when you're finished eating it. I could have ate that whole thing. But you get a lot more nutrition, so you really don't have to eat as much because you're getting so much nutrition. I also did a banana nut carrot bread, and it was very moist, and it was sprouted, and it was wonderful. It was delicious. So I've done oatmeal, like I said, rice and beans, and the oatmeal is really tricky because it doesn't take much at all for oatmeal, much water, very little. And if you're going to, if you like your oatmeal really textured like I do, I don't like mush for oatmeal. I don't want just mush. I want texture. And so you have to put just a little bit of water. But pretty much that's what I've been doing this week. And as I said, it's already broken down for you whenever you, when you soak it. It's pre-digested, the gluten is broken down, the starches are broken down. The only thing I don't want you to get confused with is soaking is not the same as cooking. When you soak something, it does pre-digest it and it breaks it down and it releases those enzymes because it's taking away the enzyme inhibitors, so it's releasing the enzymes so that you'll be able to digest it. But when you cook something, it does not break it down so that you can digest it better. It actually is cooking away all the enzymes that you need. The digestive enzymes are being cooked away, and that's why cooked food is not as digestible as raw food. I know it seems the other way. It seems like if you cook it that you're breaking it down, it's more digestible. It's the exact opposite. You want those raw vegetables. You want that roughage for your stomach. Your stomach needs something to work against, so you don't need to eat just soups all the time and soft things. You need that salad and that broccoli and cauliflower, carrots, those raw vegetables in the raw, so that you have some roughage for your stomach to work against. Maybe in some instances, you might not need to, everybody's in a different place. You might not need that for a while. Whenever you're sick, you need time for your stomach to not have to work so hard. But your stomach is a muscle and it needs something to work against. So when you're putting that raw food in there, it's giving it exercise and it needs something to work against. So and the raw food has all the digestive enzymes in it. So just like sprouting the bread, that opens the digestive enzymes so that it can be digested. And so when you cook food, you're cooking all the digestive enzymes out of it, and it's not as digestible. When you sprout something, it is more digestible. So soaking it is like making it come alive, like raw food is. Okay, so we talked about the phytic acid, and I would go so far as to say that I know this is the way grains were meant to be eaten, and I would go so far as to say that if you do not eat grains this way, you don't need to eat them at all. Just don't eat them at all unless you're going to eat them this way, because they really are not good for you if you do not soak them first and sprout them, make them come alive, get those nutrients out, and get those enzymes, those digestive enzymes. They're going to help you to process it. And it's not just what food tastes like. It's what it does for you. How does it make you feel after you eat it? It's not just how it tastes, how does it make you feel after you eat it? To me, that's another big issue. It can taste great, but if I feel terrible after I eat it, kind of like makes me not want to eat it anymore. It's just really, the trade-off is just not there. It's really just not worth it. The value's just, not there. And vice versa. You don't want something that tastes really bad, but, well, you feel great after you ate it, but it really tastes bad. You don't want that either. You want something that tastes good and that makes you feel good whenever you get through eating it. That brings me up to a subject of buckwheat. When I was talking about all these different grains, rice, corn, oats, wheat, those are the ones we think about. But the ones you may not think about is there's also quinoa, millet, what's the other one? Bulgur wheat, and some of these other ones that you might not be as familiar with. And one is called buckwheat, and buckwheat is really special because buckwheat is not actually a grain at all. It is a fruit seed. It comes from a fruit instead of from a plant, like grains are plant seeds. Wheat and oat, those are plant seeds. Well, buckwheat is a fruit seed, and it's very special. And when you eat it, you don't even have to sprout it because it's not a grain. It's actually already it's a fruit seed, or it comes from a fruit. And I always noticed that whenever I would eat it, how good I felt. I felt so nurtured, really nutritious and wholesome. I would just feel really, really good when I eat it. When you first bite into something made with buckwheat, it's not like it's like, oh, it just tastes wonderful. But it's one of those things that the more you eat it, the better it tastes. And so it just kind of grows on you, and then you just you just feel so good whenever you eat it. And so buckwheat is really special in that way that it's really not a grain. It's made into bread, just like bread, but it's just, it's from a fruit, so you don't have to soak it. It's more digestible. And so we like to make muffins and pancakes with the buckwheat because it's already ready to go. And but the last thing I want to say about grains, that I'm so excited about this, especially for the people who have been preaching and teaching that, grains are bad for you, human beings weren't made to eat them, the raw foodists and some of these other people that are, have been saying that. And the exciting thing is, here is the answer to your bread problem. Here's the answer. The answer is that, yes, they are bad for you and not meant for you to eat if you don't prepare them properly first. And traditionally, all of our ancestors knew how to prepare them. They had to be soaked overnight to get rid of the anti-nutrients, that protective covering. You're opening the package. Who would ever eat something without opening the package? You got to open the package and get the good stuff out. And I saw this cute little cartoon that had this little wheat kernel, and he said, "Don't be mad at me. I promise I have good stuff on the inside." You just got to open it to get to it. And we are so far removed from the way that from the way that things were done in the old days. Things are so fast and so busy these days, and we're so removed from it. We don't even know how to feed ourselves anymore. We don't even know how it was supposed to be done. I believe probably what happened was at some point someone said, "Oh, Grandma and Grandpa, why are y'all doing that? You don't have to soak them. Look, I can make it without soaking it. It's just fine. Why go through all that waiting overnight and everything?" And they're thinking, the grandma and grandpa are probably thinking, well, this is the way we were taught to do it by our grandparents, and we've always done it. Mama did it this way, and we've always done it this way, so there's got to be a good reason for it. Or maybe they did understand. Maybe they're like, well, no, you have to do it this way because of the nutrition. But somewhere along the line, someone said, oh, we can do it without having to wait overnight. And they're right. You can eat it, but you're going to suffer the consequences. And now everybody's gluten intolerant and having problems with bread and not being able to lose weight when they eat bread. And so, we just have to go back to our roots. I mean, our ancestors were right. They knew how, because somewhere along the line, God had told Adam and Eve how to do this in the beginning. They knew how. I mean, it was done. They were eaten in the right state. These grains were eaten in the right state. And so I like to go back to verse 11 of the Bible, Genesis 1 verse 11, where God was creating the world, and he said that he put the trees that had fruit with the seed in it on the earth, and he also put the plants with seed in it, which is what your grains are. And it said for vegetation. And then down in verse 29, when he created man, he actually told them, this is food, this is your food. This is food for you. He had it there before they were ever created. It was ready to go. He set the table for them. Then he created them and he put them there in the garden, and he said, here, this is food for you. The trees with fruit on them with the seed in it, and the plants that bear seeds. And the plants that bear seeds are all of our grains, our rice, our oats, our corn, our wheat. And so we had fruits and bread. And I'm telling you, I could live off of raw smoothies and bread. I could live off that. I mean, I love to eat smoothies and bread for breakfast. And especially now that I know how to sprout bread and that I can eat sprouted bread, there is nothing better than that. And so basically that's what he gave us in the beginning, was fruits, and a lot of those fruits actually are what we consider vegetables because of the fruit of the plant. But fruits and breads and yum, and no hard digestion on your stomach and not sapping you of your energy. This is the way they were meant to be eaten. So go do some research on sprouting and about eating sprouted things and sprouted grains and seeds and nuts. And when we go into the kitchen, I can't wait to show you how you do this. Every Sunday night or Saturday night, I'll have all kinds of bowls all over my kitchen with things soaking for the next day that I want to work on, and prepared properly. Bread should not be, bread is the staff of life. It's something that even when you sprout it, you probably don't want to eat it a lot. I mean, it's something to lean on when you need it for extra energy. It is extra energy. Fruits and vegetables should probably always be at the forefront at the beginning. But that also reminds me of one other thing. When I was talking about the perfect food in the fruit video, I was talking about that nutrient density chart. And on that nutrient density chart, fruits are the very first because they have the most nutrition per calorie. Then you have your greens, and then your green vegetables, and then your non-green vegetables, and then your starchy vegetables, and then your root vegetables, and then your grains are down the end. And bread being at the very end, meaning that it doesn't have as much nutrition per calorie. But when I was thinking about sprouting, I was like, wait a minute, wow. If you sprout that bread, that would move it way over here on the nutrient density chart. It would take it from the end to up here with a vegetable, because now you've unlocked the nutrients. Yes, it doesn't have as much nutrients per calorie if you're not unlocking them, but when you sprout them, you unlock them. So when you unlock those nutrients, now it should be up here and be processed like a vegetable, because you're getting more nutrient per calorie than you are over here when the package is closed. So you move it up to here on the nutrient density chart when you sprout it, and you're getting a lot more nutrition per calorie, just like the fruits and vegetables. So I hope this has been helpful for you. I hope it has opened your eyes to a new area of your life, because I know it has for me. And I know that sprouting and soaking overnight seems like just another step, but it's really not that difficult. It is to us because we can't imagine waiting overnight for something to happen. I mean, we can't imagine that. For something to happen naturally on its own so that it's better for us. I mean, we're such a fast-paced society. We just want everything instant, right here, right now, and fast food, drive-thrus, and, everything's instant. We don't wait for anything, so we can't imagine waiting overnight for something to happen. But I promise you, it's not that big a deal. It's not that hard. You're really doing passive work. You're doing anything but waiting, and you just put it in there and you wait for it to do its thing, and you will be rewarded. The benefits are great. I have already seen the rewards of it. I have the last 2 weeks eating this sprouted bread. It is so different and so wonderful. So I hope you'll do more research on this. You can reach me. My email is righttouchdetail@bellsouth.net. My blog is www.destiny-dawn.blogspot.com. You can also see me on Facebook and here on the YouTube channel. So I hope you have a wonderful, blessed rest of your day.